Welcome to Unholy Vibes, a journey through the realms of true horror. Please note, while this is not a religious podcast, the narratives shared by our guests often intertwine with their personal faiths and beliefs. Our aim is to respectfully present these stories in their authentic form, which sometimes includes religious elements essential for context and understanding. We embrace guests from diverse spiritual backgrounds, recognizing that these beliefs can significantly shape their experiences. Thank you for joining us, and let's delve into the unexplained with an open mind and respect for all perspectives.
Welcome to Unholy Vibes, or the Unholy Vibes podcast. I'm Alex, the host, and today we have a wonderful guest, Christina. Christina, introduce yourself. Tell
Hi.
people who you are.
Yeah, my name is Christina Benoist, and got a spooky story to tell today.
Yes, she does. So I've heard this story, and actually, I'm going to give a little background on how we even came to this story. Years ago, I was visiting Utah, and I was at a friend's house with just a group of old mission friends, whatever. And I just like spooky stories. I love a good scary story, whether it's ghosts or murderers or stalkers or monsters or whatever, aliens, anything. It could be anything, paranormal or not. And so we were sharing our spooky stories because I've had very few experiences personally. I always ask people, have you ever seen a ghost? I've never seen a ghost myself, but I just like hearing about it. It's like I'm living through them, right? So I was visiting, we're with a group of friends, we're telling our spooky stories. And you ever sit around a campfire or even in a room with like 5, 6, 7, 10 people and you're all telling spooky stories and you guys kind of feel like icky?
I can feel it now, even you saying it.
That's the unholy vibe right there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the unholy vibe, is that you're just like, oh, what did we were just telling stories and I feel gross about it. And we always have to lighten the mood afterward, like, isn't life great? And just talk about happy things. Mm-hmm. So that night, a friend of mine named Taylor Sant, she told me a story that has stuck with me since. I think about it once a week. Not a joke. I think about this story all of the time, and it's been about 5 years since then. And I call her story The Red-Faced Man. And this story fascinated me that I told it to everyone I could. So years later, I'm telling it to Scotty and a group of friends here. And I don't even think you guys had met yet when I first told him. I don't think. And then even more time passes, and I get a phone call from him while you guys are driving, actually. And he goes, oh, Fuentes, by the way, Christina has a crazy red-faced man story. And I was shocked. I was immediately like, what? How? What? Who? What? Where? When? Why? Because I had looked online everywhere to see if anyone ever had another story with a red-faced man. And I found a song called The Red-Faced Man. That was about it. I searched Reddit, and that's like the deep dark. You know what I mean? And nothing. So when I heard that you were like, oh yeah, I have a story too, I immediately had to know. But I wasn't going to have you tell me over the phone. So I waited until we were in person, like 2 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Give or take. Was it really 2 years ago?
Yeah. Or like a year and a half.
It was before we moved back here.
Oh yeah, true.
So yeah, year and a half. Sheesh. Anyway.
Time. Wow,
time sure flies. Yeah. The spookiest thing of them all are all of our impending doom. Anywho, so I had relayed the story to her because she hadn't heard my version of Taylor's version of the Red-Faced Man. And so that night it was 1 and 2 back to back, and it was fantastic. And I love it. And you'll see that there's not very many actual connections between the two, but the red-faced man himself. So this has been a long time coming to get 1 and 2 put together. And I really started Unholy Vibes just so people could hear this story. If I only had 2 episodes, the red-faced man 1 and 2, that's, I don't care. Like,
First
that can
and
be
last
it.
2 episodes.
Exactly.
This is it.
Exactly. So I'm ready to hear your story. Let's get you going. Let's get you into it. Let's get those unholy vibes. Let's get the spooky feels, the tingles, the shivers. And go ahead and give us the backstory, where you were going, what you were doing, who you were with, all of it. Spare no detail.
Okay, so I realized that this story happened almost 10 years ago, like to the day.
Really?
So my family lives all around the country, and we always try to meet somewhere for Christmas for like a week. And
It really is?
yeah. So my family all flew in from different places, and we were going to go to this cabin in Colorado. So I'm originally from the Denver area, and we were going to a cute little mountain cabin just outside of Grand Junction. So I guess the characters in all of this, there's my oldest sister, Jessica, my middle sister, Melissa, my oldest sister's my nephew. So my oldest sister's son, Truman, and then kind of the rest of my family was there. But those are the main people that are worth noting. My middle sister and her husband were flying in a little bit after everyone else had already gotten there. So my mom was staying in Grand Junction, and the rest of us went up to this cabin to just kind of get settled and unload and unpack. So we drive up. It's legitimately in the middle of nowhere. And it should be kind of magical, but it's also kind of scary, like the start of every horror movie where you're just in the middle of nowhere. And
Cabin in the woods.
Cabin in the woods, exactly.
But there's snow this time.
But there's snow, yeah. So yeah, we get up there, we're unloading, and it's a pretty tiny little space. And there's kind of a loft bedroom, and it's a really steep staircase to get up there. And my nephew, who was 5 at the time, he was upstairs just playing, having a good time, just by himself. We just hear him upstairs. My oldest sister and I are unloading groceries and just kind of getting settled. And all of a sudden, he lets out this just blood-curdling scream. I feel like I can still hear it now. And we immediately think, like, he's fallen off the bed. He's cracked his head open. Something bad has happened. He's injured himself. So my sister and I run up the stairs, and he is sobbing, and he is pointing at the closet door in this loft room, and he's trembling and is like, there's a man in there. He has a red face. There's a man. And my nephew has always kind of had some paranormal experiences. I feel like when he was really little, he would always say, like, we would be just hanging out at his house, and we would go into the living room, and he would always be like, no, I'm not going in there. That man is in there. We'd always be like, what are you talking about? What man? So things like that happen, but nothing ever scared him really. So we run upstairs. He's trembling. He's crying. He's pointing at the closet door. We open the doors. We're looking all around the room. There's no one there. And we just thought, I mean, he was a really imaginative little boy. So we just assumed, like, he was playing and he just let his imagination get away from him. And he thought he saw something, but nothing was there. So we kind of move on.
At that moment, though, when he's freaking out and you realize he's not hurt and he says there's a man in the closet, did you not have, like, a moment of panic?
It was a moment of panic. We definitely had that initial moment of panic. And then, but I never thought that it was something paranormal. I just thought, like, we're in a cabin in the woods. We should have checked to make sure, like, no one was squatting here.
The previous occupants were gone.
Yes. Yeah.
There wasn't an overbooked Airbnb or anything.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, this is 2013 Airbnb meeting.
Yeah,
whatever,
true.
Yeah.
But like barbarian style, it could have been that. So I think I was more scared of that. Like, it was a real human man there. And then once I realized there was nothing there, it was like, okay, now I feel bad because I was just like, okay, calm down. You're fine.
How old was he again?
He was 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So I feel like he was playing a lot. He would play monsters and he played spooky things. So it's not like it was too far out of his imagination to, like, think he saw something.
Right.
So yeah, we kind of just move on with our day and we're having fun in the snow. It's great. And then my mom and my sister Melissa and her husband fly in and they end up driving up to this cabin. We have just a normal night. Like, we are cooking dinner. It's fine. It definitely feels very isolated out there, but not, like, kind of in a fun way.
Yeah.
Not in like, oh, we're going to die out here or something is going to haunt us way.
It's like camping.
It was like camping. So we all go to sleep, and my sister Melissa and her husband take the upstairs bedroom. And we hadn't told her anything about what Truman had seen because we thought that it was just his imagination. We didn't put any stock into what he was saying. It was kind of just like, okay, let's move on from the day and not mention this again. So she doesn't know anything that's happened or what he thought he saw in this room. So she goes to sleep, and we didn't ever grow up having paranormal experiences or seeing ghosts or anything like that. We weren't one of those families that always has like a ghost following them from house to house or something like that. So,
if only.
If only. So she goes to sleep, and she wakes up in the middle of the night, and she feels this huge weight on her chest. She feels like she can't move, and her eyes are just like kind of darting around. She's never had sleep paralysis or anything like that. So,
which is what most people would automatically think.
Yes, yeah, but she's never experienced that or really had any issues sleeping or anything. So she wakes up, she feels this huge weight on her chest. She can't move. And all of a sudden, she like kind of turns her eyes to the side. She looks over to her right, and she starts feeling this hand slowly work its way up her face and like kind of just stay there on her cheek. And she can feel like a shadow come around her, and she sees a man with a red face. And she's paralyzed with fear, and she feels this weight on her. So she literally can't move. She's so scared that she feels like she can't say anything or speak or do anything. So this man with the red face is just staring at her, and she can't move. And she automatically was just like, this is a nightmare. Like, I'm just going to close my eyes and not say anything. This isn't real. This can't be real. So she just forces herself to go back to sleep and she's just trying not to put any weight into what she's feeling at all. So then she wakes up the next morning, and she comes downstairs and is like very clearly shaken up. And she tells us about her dream, and she very clearly thinks it's a dream and is like, I had the scariest nightmare. I imagine that there was like this man with a red face. And I'm just like cooking breakfast. We're doing our own thing in the morning. And as soon as she said that, it was like, wait, what? We thought it was a joke too. I think me and my older sister were like, okay, yeah, a man with a red face. Yeah, we've heard this story before. Like somehow she found out about it. Truman told her. She's just trying to make light of it. And then you can see that she's visibly scared by what happened. And she tells us her dream, and we all are like, this doesn't feel right. Like you're saying, that unholy, that spooky feeling that just like comes over you. We all just felt this wave. This is not a good place to be. We can't stay here. We were supposed to be there for a few more days, and we were like, nope, this can't, we gotta go. So we ended up packing up our stuff and went back to Grand Junction and ended up staying there for Christmas because it just did not feel right. But it's funny, after I told you this story, we didn't really talk about it. My family, we just moved on from it and just had a normal holiday.
Yeah.
But after we talked about it, I messaged everyone in our family group chat and was like, do you guys remember that? That was so scary. My sister Melissa, who actually saw it, was like, that I think about that all the time. That was one of the scariest things that's ever happened to me. And my mom and my oldest sister respond, and they were like, you guys really blew that out of proportion. Like, nothing happened. There was not a ghost. You guys were just freaked out, and that's why we left, because we knew you weren't going to be able to get over it. So my oldest sister doesn't believe in ghosts at all. But it was so interesting because in the moment, all of us were so scared.
You all felt that.
We all felt it.
Thing.
Yes.
And I made a point to someone else the other day because I was asking around, like, hey, does anyone have any good spooky stories? Yeah. And someone messaged me and he said, well, I don't really believe in that. And I said, you don't have to believe in something to have a scary story. Like,
yeah.
something can be scary without you believing in it or not. Like there are things that we just can't explain, whether you want to try and rationalize it and say your mind is playing tricks on you. But the more, I mean, there's a lot we don't know.
Totally.
And the fact that there was no communication of the instance from your nephew to your sister. And it's like, this happened before she got here. They got there. She went to bed. Has this happened and wakes up. And then she says all this. And you're like, even you were like, yeah, right. Okay. But then once she was like, no, you could tell. Like you could tell.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting that those kind of vibes, again, for lack of a better word, they can be felt by everyone in the room.
Totally.
And so that's, yeah.
I think it's so interesting too. I feel like, whatever it is, whether it was a ghost or a demon or just like a hive mind where they both were just thinking the same thing.
Group psychosis, you know?
Group psychosis. Honestly, probably the most likely explanation. But that's spooky no matter what the explanation is. Like my sister Melissa and I are convinced, obviously, that it was a demon. And I feel even more convinced of that after hearing Taylor's story. But I feel like there has to be some kind of explanation and we can't pinpoint it. But I feel like it's so interesting how we are so sure that it was something. And as time goes on, the rest of my family's like, nah, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I don't know why you're putting so much stock into this. It's just so interesting how people handle different situations.
And it didn't even happen to you directly, and you're still like, I'm convinced.
Yeah.
You trust your sister, especially after your nephew and your sister's stories kind of overlapped. And I don't know if I've ever asked you this, but like you just said you believe that you think it was like a demon or something like that. What makes you think that? What drove you to that conclusion to think demon?
Yeah. I just think it's, I mean, unless it is group psychosis, I truly think there is nothing else that it could be that would give you that kind of feeling. Like that, I feel like I can still picture my nephew's face. I can still picture my sister's face. And I don't think that they could just trick their brain into feeling those things. Like there was something clearly that scared them that was tangible and real. And I just don't, I wish that I had some kind of proof of what it would be, but I just feel in my...
I wish I got visited by the red-faced man.
I know. I pray for it every night.
Tonight's the night. After
I know. I just got a heat wave even saying it out loud. I really don't want that.
Sage this place.
Yeah.
We're going to have to say some prayers or something.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I wanted to ask. Background, like, your family wasn't really religious or anything growing up, right? There's not religious practices in the family.
No.
You yourself now, not really religious?
No, yeah, no one is really religious. I feel like my dad had a nice little Catholic church stint in his life, but it has never been anything consistent. We've never really like talked about spirits. That's never really been a conversation or believing in something else. That's nothing that my family has ever really discussed. So yeah, it is interesting that, I don't know. Yeah, it's just interesting that that's never come up in our family.
Yeah. And then something like this happens.
Yeah.
Now, outside of the red-faced man, well, actually, before I move on, would you just kind of put a bow, wrap up the religious thing? Would you say you're like more of like in the agnostic space, if anything, or atheist or who, like a lot of people are in the, I don't know, like who knows kind of thing, because obviously a lot of people have experiences and a lot of people don't. I don't. I am religious. I've had like, they'll hear it eventually, but I've had one, maybe two things, and emphasis on the maybe. The one was the dome home story in Georgia. I've told you that.
Oh, yeah.
I've told you that.
Yeah.
And I know what happened. I know I was there. And I am a very skeptical religious person.
Yeah.
Like I have my faith, I have my religion, I believe certain things, and I believe certain things are outside of our realm of understanding. But then when people come and tell me stories, I'm like, that sounds sus. I don't know, at best. But when I hear certain things, like her story, like your story, it's like, oh yeah, that definitely happened. I don't know how to explain it. I am spooky story agnostic. You know what I mean?
I feel it's so funny because I feel like I'm just 100% the opposite of that, where I feel like I'm agnostic leaning towards atheist, but stories like that, like the unexplainable weird things that happen in the universe, I, for better or worse, I'm like, I'm in 100%. I believe in all of it. And it doesn't really make any sense because I should be the most skeptical person when it comes to it, but I immediately am like, yep, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, of course.
And you know what? I should retract what I said a little bit. I'm skeptical in the sense where maybe it just has to do with bad storytelling. Someone could tell me the truest thing in the world, but if you tell it in a bad way, I'm like, that was a terrible story. I don't even want to hear it anymore.
Yeah.
Because and I've said this, but anyone can say, I saw a ghost.
Yeah.
Sure you did. Okay, great.
Mm-hmm.
And then what? I saw him. Add a little fluff, add a little flair. Because as soon as I said that, I'm like, well, I believe stuff about skinwalkers and wendigos, and that is not even that is an entirely separate world from me.
Mm-hmm.
And with Taylor's story, she was in South America, and there was a person.
Yeah.
That was a person. And I want to say it happened to her. I forget when she got back, but I want to say she was down there from like 2011 to 12 or 12 to 13. So almost around the same time.
Yeah, it would have been the same time.
I could be wrong because, again, we're recording this before her. So sorry. But it was around that time. And so that got me thinking, like, why did the timelines even line up? And again, totally different spots. Colorado and then Montevideo and Uruguay.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. But I think about this a lot, and I just want to know more. And you said you text your sister and your nephew, right?
So I texted my family group chat that's just me and my mom and my sisters. And I asked about my nephew because he was so young. I feel like that could have been something that he just forgot and moved on from. Mm-hmm. But I guess it's something that he brings up quite a bit too. So I haven't actually asked him because I don't know. I get nervous that he's then going to be like, I see dead people all the time, or that it's going to spiral.
He's what, 15 now?
He's 15, yeah.
Okay, we need to talk to him immediately.
I know. He would love to tell it, I'm sure. And I feel like I should ask him about some of the other experiences that he had, because it started when he was so little. And I feel like you always hear about kids having experiences like that. So I don't know how he feels about it now, but he definitely talks about how scared he was, and he remembers it vividly, that entire cabin experience. And I guess anytime they talk about a cabin in my sister's family, he's like, nope, no way in hell are we doing that. Yeah. That's not. So it's something he has really carried through his life.
I mean, and for my own selfish reasons, I'm like, yeah, let's talk to him and see what else he's got in the chamber, because you never may know. But he's still 15. It might traumatize him.
Yeah.
Or he might be like, yes, there's so much more.
Yeah, no one's ever asked me, and this has been a huge burden on my life.
He's going to take up 10 more episodes.
Yeah, a whole series just on the JP scene.
Well, yeah. You'll have to share this with him. Just be like, hey, I told the story.
Yeah. He may have some notes. Honestly.
He's like, great, back to therapy. Yep. Thanks. Thanks, Christina. So I'm all over the place with this, but back to the actual place. It's kind of isolated. It's a cabin. Mm-hmm. Why this place, of all places, to have some red-faced man demon there?
I know. Yeah, it's true. I feel like I've thought a lot about, this may sound really dumb, but I think about what else has happened on that land. Mm-hmm. I mean, this cabin was built in like the 1950s or something, so it hasn't been there that long, but it is kind of in the middle of nowhere in Colorado.
What can happen in 60 years,
yeah.
50, 60 years.
But I think about, like, maybe it was like some kind of spirit that has been there for a long time, or who knows? Who knows what it
It's
could
built
be?
on a
But
burial ground. Who
it
knows?
was, yeah, it was built on a burial ground. It was like a cowboy or something, like something that relates to the land there, because it is so isolated and because it's Colorado and it's the Wild West and anything.
Some native spirits out there like, what are you doing here? You
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's interesting though, because I want, when I think of this story and I hear this story, I think the two red-faced men seen are the same, right? It's it's one person. Your nephew saw the same person that your sister did. And they weren't necessarily malicious or violent towards your nephew. He just saw this man in the closet. Okay, and then it was gone. But then your sister has she had any sleep paralysis since then? That's another thing.
That is something that I asked her too when I asked her about this story, and I was trying to see if she had anything else to add to it, but she said that she has never had anything like that happen ever again. So it was really just this one experience. And I also feel like I should add to they both described what they saw as being like a fully formed man. It wasn't like
Just a floating head.
it wasn't a floating head. It wasn't like a ghost. It wasn't hazy. It felt like there was someone else in the room with them. Like it was a real person standing there. But it is interesting too. I feel like I have always pictured it as a demon, but it really didn't do anything. It didn't hurt my nephew. It didn't hurt my sister. It just felt scary.
Yeah, it seems to be a little bit more aggressive when your sister got involved.
Yeah.
It's like on her, touching her face, in her face.
Oh.
We don't like that.
Nope.
If anyone did that to me in my sleep, I would be very distraught.
Yeah,
So,
ghost or real human.
yeah, but I just am curious, and this is all speculation now, but it's like, what was that guy thinking? If that was just some spirit of a long past man who lived there before or died there or whatever, what's he thinking? What's he doing? Or is there any maliciousness? Is it just someone who doesn't know they're dead? Is it something more sinister, like actual intended harm, but you guys got out quickly? You were out within 24 hours, right? That's what it sounds like. So
yeah, who knows what if anything else would have happened if we had stayed there. But it's also interesting too, because I feel like I've had friends throughout the years that have had really scary experiences, or I feel like I had a roommate for a long time that we lived in multiple places throughout the years together, and he had something always happen in every place, and he would see consistently the same kind of spirit from childhood. And
he was haunted.
So he was haunted, but I feel like I hear stories, and a lot of people that have situations like this, it is then something that haunts them throughout the rest of their life. Like once it kind of attaches to you, I don't know, maybe you haven't, maybe it's not.
It's an interesting thought. It's because my mom told me a story years ago, and it's been at least 15 years since she's told me this, but I remember this was when she was in high school. So 50 years ago. And she said, if I remember correctly, I can't recall if it was her or one of her girlfriends that was being followed by the ghost of their dead friend.
No.
And I could be, dude, I'm going to have her tell me the story when I'm visiting her next month. But she said that, like, and it kills me that I'm misquoting it, but she said that I think she could see the ghost of the dead girl following her other girlfriend around.
Jeez.
And again, it's been so long. I usually have a pretty tight lock on good scary stories, but I heard that story before I was even interested in spooky stuff, and so I was like, ugh.
Oh.
But that was one where it was like someone they knew. It was a personal thing. And then you've got people, I won't say this person's name because they like to remain anonymous, but I have a buddy who has a lot of people would consider him like a medium. He wouldn't, but a lot of people would see and hear his stories and say, oh yeah, you just have a very strong connection with the other side or the spirit world or whatever you want to believe. He's told me stories where he would see someone following someone, just, oh, there's two people. But then he would be with another person, say, hey, who was that with so-and-so? And they'd be like, oh, it was just them.
Wow.
It's like, no, there were two people. And then multiple people would confirm, no, it was just one. They just walked out. So imagine if I came in with a ghost following me and only you could see it.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean?
That feels like a movie. That doesn't feel like real life.
I'll tell you more. I'll tell you more of that one off.
Yes.
Off this,
Oh,
because
that's so
I don't want to tell his stuff without his,
Yeah.
It's a whole thing. But I think people can have things attached to him. I will tell another one of my mom's short, quick stories that she actually just told me like a month ago. She runs a crystal shop in Arizona, you know this.
Yeah.
And she does aroma touch therapy, and she has like an oxygen lounge, like it's a whole thing, right? So she had a lady coming in to get her healing vibration crystals, all this stuff, whatever. I don't really know a lot about the crystal world, okay?
Yeah.
I know that people buy them. And she had a lady coming in complaining about a pain like in her shoulder, her arms, and my mom is apparently very sensitive and can see and feel certain things. She says, you have something attached to you. And it happened when she was, this client of hers had gone out camping. Something had attached to her. And in my mind, I'm like, maybe she just slept funky. But she was like, no, I can feel a presence just following her around.
Wait, this is so weird. This is reminding me, I'll let you finish your story, but this is reminding me something that is somehow connecting to the red face story, but keep going.
Excellent. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Well, it short story long. My mom talked to this lady about when it started, all of this stuff. And for lack of better words, my mom claims to have essentially performed a little mini exorcism on this lady and was basically talking to the presence following her saying, this is not your place. You shouldn't be attaching to someone that you don't know, first of all, or something like that. And she's like, you need to go, you need to move on. It's okay to move on. And just did some energy work with this lady. And then it was gone. And the lady says her shoulder felt better, all this stuff. And it came in the next day, all bright, happy, had more light in her eyes, all that.
Wow.
And my mom has a lot of stories and back into like the religious vein. She is religious, but she hasn't always been. She's kind of gone in and out. She practices her religion in her own special way.
Yeah.
She's more spiritual a lot of the times than like religious, but she is part of a religion.
Yeah.
So, but she has a lot of spiritual experiences. Not all of them spooky. They're just in that spiritual vein.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool. You telling that story, though, I have never, ever put this together. And I don't know exactly how this went because this is my sister's story, but I'll try and tell it as best I can. I feel like a few years ago, probably 4 or 5 years ago now, my sister Melissa, who had the red face story, red face man touch her face, she called me and she was getting a massage one day. And her massage therapist was like, I do a little bit of energy work, and she is like a Reiki specialist and all this stuff. And she was like, I can feel something dark that's like hovering over you. And she asked my sister, would it be okay if I did some work on you? And I think because it's interesting because she did have this thing happen in the cabin that really scared her, but she is very skeptical when it comes to things like that and very skeptical about Reiki and healing work and energy. She rolls her eyes a little bit at it. And so she lets this woman do it and was just like, okay, what's happening?
No harm. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, my massage is over. Do whatever you think you have to do. But this woman apparently told her that she had a ton of tension in her neck and that she could sense that there was like some kind of dark shadow attached to her. And my sister put a few different meanings on based on her history that it could have been that it had attached itself to her. But it's interesting you saying that because so this woman did all this work and my sister left and she started just sobbing and felt this huge relief. And she felt like something had finally been released from her body. And
real deep tissue there.
Real deep tissue. But it's just interesting because I wonder if it has any connection to that. Like if it was something like the red-faced man or some kind of spirit like that had attached itself to her.
Just a lot
I
of
don't know.
negative vibes,
A lot of
negative
vibes.
energy,
Yeah.
you know?
That could be a stretch, but it's interesting you saying that. I had never thought about what it could really be that she felt like was released.
Even religious people are like, Reiki, crystals, get out of here,
Yeah.
you know? So you get the religious and non-religious that are both like, that's weird.
That's one thing that I love. I'm like, what harm does it do? Sure, give me a crystal. I'll charge it by the moon. Let's do it.
Retrograde, you got it, babe.
Yes.
Like, let's go.
I love it.
Yeah, it's that is interesting. And I actually had this isn't even like a full story, but I had a buddy of mine who was deeply religious and basically said that like Reiki work and energy work is like bad. And
Really?
that it's again, depends where you're coming from, religious, and there's so many religions, so many different gods, goddesses, anything, right? All that. And so he's a Christian fellow. Let me narrow it down by that. He's a fellow Christian. He was basically saying that like Reiki work and energy work is unholy because being a Christian person, you're like, oh, well, you're superseding God, or you're going, or you don't need God or Jesus. You have this random, you have a Vanessa to whisk your arms and get rid of the bad vibes. You know what I mean? Or whatever. That is that derogatory to use Vanessa as a basic white girl name?
I've never thought of anyone named Vanessa, or that has never come up as an
You're
example
like, I've never
name.
even known a Vanessa.
Yeah.
I actually know, we all know the same person that I think you know who I'm talking about, but at least he and I know a girl who does Reiki. Her name's not
really?
Vanessa though. I didn't want to say her name though. But yeah, I think a lot of religious people, especially Christians, would say crystals and energy work are like false gods.
Yeah.
And I am a religious Christian person, but I'm also like, again, like we said, there's so much we don't know.
Yeah.
If you're religious, no matter the religion, the max you have is a book about that thick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson's got books, like this with more lore. You know what I mean? So the point is like, there's more that we don't know than what we do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, who's to say? So that's where I'm agnostic in that sense. Like you can tell a lot of times if you get like bad vibes about certain things, like Ouija boards. No, thank you.
I was just gonna ask what you think about inviting those experiences.
Now, I'm not trying to jump down a rabbit hole all night, but no, I would never. I would go back to that cabin, though.
No.
We should find it. We should.
Yeah, I can.
Go as
I
a
know
group
exactly.
vacation.
Oh God, not a vacation. We would have to rent the place like a mile down the road.
How else are we gonna get in? I want to see the closet. I need to be in the loft.
What if we go and visit and we knock on the door and the red-faced man just opens the door for
I'll have
us?
so many questions. So many questions. But I would rather go to a haunted location than be like, let me invite spirits that, when it comes to Ouija boards, are traditionally more malicious. And I do believe in spirits. I believe in, I wouldn't say the traditional sense of like a demon, like, but I believe they're here.
Yeah.
Are all of them like, high ranking grade A demons? I don't know.
Yeah.
They're just spirits, but there's enough people that have, unless the whole world is under like a group psychosis, which is you're a group delusion, which is possible. Anything is possible. The point I'm getting at is, I believe there's stuff out there, but I am still able to be discerning. I use my brain. I wouldn't go play with a Ouija board or sounding rods.
Yeah.
I'm not going water witching anytime soon, which is crazy that water witching is like, it apparently works quite well. But water witch, the rod thing, they would do that with sticks to find wells.
Oh yeah.
To dig wells back in the day. My stepdad told me he's done it.
Man.
To find water. People, is there science behind that? I don't know. But the rods, and this is such a tangent, I'm so sorry. years ago. This is 7th, maybe 8th grade. I had no clue about any of this nonsense. And my buddy let me borrow their rods. And nothing happened, no experience, because I didn't know what they were, first of all. And he was like, yeah, you just ask it questions and it will like point you in the direction of the thing you're thinking about. Or there was no yes, no stuff. And so I was like, does this girl like me? Where is she? I really like this girl.
She loves me. She loves me now.
Yeah, it was like that because I'm a 7th grader. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Weird that one's. I should erase that from my hard drive. It's so useless. I should just get rid of that. But yeah, that's the only time I've been like, again, ignorance. It was just pure ignorance is bliss. Nowadays, we have people that we know, both of us know, that are like, I love the dowsing rods. That's what they're not. Sounding rods.
Dowsing rods.
Dowsing rods.
I feel like
sounding rods.
I thought that was just another name for it. Otherwise,
no, dowsing rods.
Yeah, I feel like we have used dowsing rods and had some really amazing things happen and some really scary things happen. And I think for a minute we invited a really evil spirit into our house.
Well, and from my point of view, is you're casting a line out into the void. You don't get to choose what bites the hook. You're just pulling stuff back, hoping for the best.
Yeah.
Because again, this is my perspective. Again, not everyone believes like this, but those spirits are here, the ones that were never born, and they're the evil spirits, if you will. But also people that have died, their spirits are still here. Yeah. And so you got a mixture.
Yeah.
I mean, not all ghost stories are scary.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, oh, my grandpa, visited me and told me it was going to be okay or whatever. And that doesn't sound evil or malicious to me. It all turned out great.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. You're just casting a fishing line into the void, the eternal void. And you just, whatever bites.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
So, yeah, that is interesting, though. Removing my tangent, going back to the energy healing your sister had done. I am curious about that because that's crazy.
I know. Yeah, I never have thought about it framed like that, but
we really should try and go back to that cabin. That would be so great.
That would be fun.
Nothing happened to us, adventure. You know? Yeah. I've had my fair share of cabin in the woods experiences, but only the one, and it wasn't even a cabin; it was a dome. But yeah, that is. I love it. I love that. I love the red-faced man story. And I would love to hear more of your nephew's perspective. Yeah. Because he was just crying and he was 5. And apparently he remembers it. And memory can be a weird thing and it can deceive us. So over the last 10 years, it sounds like it stayed pretty concrete in his mind, though. So
definitely.
I'd be interested to hear what he has to say or if there's more. Because he could be Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense right now and just being like, no one believes me anyway. I'm not saying nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
just used to it now.
Yeah. You'll have to let me know if you talk to him anytime soon because I'd be really curious to hear what he has to say. Yeah. Anyway, anything else you want to add?
No, I'm really excited to hear some of the other stories that you have coming on this podcast. I feel spooky already. This is fun.
Yeah,
this is really fun.
And thank you, by the way, for setting up the beautiful the setup here. We are blessed. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited, and I think you'll be very pleased with some of the stories to come. Yeah. For all of you listening, I hope you enjoyed Christina's story. Thank you again, Christina, for telling. We're so happy to have you, and glad to have you again if you want, if you have more to tell. And if you know anyone, those listening and Christina, if you guys know anyone that has a really good spooky story, something that stuck with you, stuck with them, whether it's happened to you, happened to them, something that's brought about those unholy vibes, reach out. We want to hear them. You can email me at unholyvibespod@gmail.com, or you can DM me on Instagram only right now. I'm still new. We're still in the beginnings. So unholyvibespod at Instagram as well. But yeah, this has been Unholy Vibes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, stay spooky.